Thanks everyone for coming and spending your time here today. I know that there's like an hour booked and we got started about 20 minutes a little late. But the good news is we have a whole hour booked in this slot and my slide is only 20 minutes. So my empowerment promise is that in the next 20 minutes, you'll hear things you might not have considered before, and some of those things will change how you see the possibilities of human cooperation forever. This is blockchain week, right? But I'm not going to talk about some cool new revolutionary tech. Today I'm going to talk about an ancient practice that is making a comeback and that is challenging everything we know about modern governance. I call this talk Beyond State and Market. When I first read that phrase, it stopped me dead in my tracks. I was like, wait, we can do that? There's something else beyond state and market? There's some other way to do cooperation, to do governance, to value things? And it never occurred to me simply because I'm so deep in this construct of market and state that it's very difficult to see outside. For me, it was an earth is not flat moment, where everything I thought I understood about the knowledge we have for certain was turned upside down on its head. And words have power, and the combination of words can be an incantation of sorts. These four words, beyond, market, and state, cast a spell over me. And I want to give credit to the people who created the spell. It wasn't me. It was David Bollier. It was many people, probably. Eleanor Ostrom has an academic paper from 2010, which she titles Beyond Markets and States, Polycentric Governance of Complex Economic Systems. David Bollier and Silke Helfrich published a book called The Wealth of the Commons, A World Beyond State and Market. And it's that book that, it's a collection of essays that I came across that really stopped me in my tracks. So beyond state and market, it's also a challenge. Who here is satisfied with the world we live in based on the current markets and states that have brought us here? Does everyone feel like we're doing great? More markets, more states. Okay, just Chris, to be facetious. I'm going to talk about one of the oldest forms of human cooperation, one that has lasted for primordial, even before humans, living organisms learned how to cooperate with each other to sustain shared resources. An old form of human cooperation that has all since disappeared since the 19th century. Recently, in the last few decades, the concept and the practice has been re-emerging. The more you learn about it, the more places you see it. I'm going to talk about commons, and specifically commoners, commoning commons. It's something that changes the game that's been dominated by states and markets for the past 200 years. Throughout this, I'm also going to dispel some common myths about modern governance. Modern governance has us believing that states and markets is the only way to do it, the only way we can govern societies and price things with accuracy. So we're going to go beyond and see what we find there. So what's so bad about markets and states, right? We're all here. We're all feeling good about where we are today. It's worked out well enough for a lot of us. For some of us, it's worked out terribly. In the end, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because if we don't change course, none of us are going to be here to debate whether it's good or not anymore. So what's wrong with states? This is not a one-slide conversation. This is not a one talk. This is researched in universities and in graduate programs and in many different think tanks. There's so much about states that's not working for most people anymore. And I just want to bring up a few of the biggies. This idea of corporate personhood versus natural person was one of the biggest shifts in state control. Corporate personhoods outspend, outlobby, outmaneuver natural persons on every front, in every way, every time. There's no competition. This means that the interests of corporations, profits, the bottom line, will supersede the interests of natural persons. There's almost no way to change that in this structure. Representative democracy in its latest form is representing corporations better than the people. Global financial exclusion. Canada. Can I just say Canada and let everyone understand what I mean? People who are maybe possibly accused of supporting protesters found themselves excluded from the financial banking system. They weren't even protesting. They were supporting protesters against the government. The money of the Afghani people that was redistributed for other purposes. The sanctions in Russia right now, whether you agree or not on the situation, the war, just the idea that there is a centralized control of access to the global financial system, and that, I don't want to say on a whim, but at any point it can, a country, a sovereign nation can be cut off from that global financial system, is something that is difficult to square. Top-down governance systems are failing us. But we know people can't govern themselves, right? Myth. This woman, whose name is Elinor Ostrom, won a Nobel Prize in 2009 exactly by proving that ordinary people are able to govern shared resources. She was a field researcher, a transdisciplinarian, an economist, a political scientist. She gathered decades of empirical research on commons that were existing in the world, exactly to prove that, that there is human cooperation evident, successful, and attainable. And in the words of the Nobel Prize, her groundbreaking research demonstrating that ordinary people are capable of creating rules and institutions that allow for sustainable and equitable management of shared resources. Now think about that. She won a Nobel Prize for proving that people can cooperate with each other. It's so revolutionary an idea that they gave her a Nobel Prize for it. One of her quotes is, "There's no reason to believe that bureaucrats and politicians, no matter how well-meaning, are better at solving problems than the people on the spot who have the strongest incentive to get the solution right." What about markets? Markets are everywhere. Markets is a really broad term. We're not talking about markets where children are selling lemonade at a lemonade stand. Equities, real estate, supermarkets, all kinds of markets. This idea of enclosures is something that is, I would say, is the biggest reason why commons have slowly disappeared since the 19th century. Common wealth, common resources used to be shared among the people who were using it. Forests, people living in villages around forests would cut down wood for their homes, for their wood fires. And as the nobles decided that that was their land to hunt in, and that these people, these commoners, were infringing on their right to hunt, they started enclosing these spaces and locking the people in the areas around these spaces from participating in any of the, having access to any of the value in these shared resources. So the expropriation and commercialization of shared resources for private market gains. Now this is happening not just in the lands in England, but in the patenting of genes, in the privatization of land and water. Who's allowed to access fresh water and sell it to other people to buy that fresh water? The overextension of the copyright law, creative works that are privatized and commercialized. Transforming our open internet into closed proprietary market spaces. In fact, many parts of the Commonwealth, water, land, forests, fisheries, biodiversities, creative works, public spaces, indigenous cultures are all at risk. Predatory and extractive. I almost feel like I don't have to go too deep into that. It'd be harder to find a market that doesn't encourage extractive predatory practices than one that does. The temptation to monetize relationships and resources is too strong in markets, and they destroy the social solidarity and our ability to collectively steward resources. Okay, one more note, and this is a quote from Bollier. Markets have also benefited from the state's providing of free and discounted access to public forest, minerals, areas, research, and other public resources. And I think that's really powerful. These don't belong to the states and markets. These belong to the people who are on the land tending to these, stewarding these natural resources. So, extractive, enclosure-fueled markets are failing us. But we know how much things cost because of the market. We know how much to pay for things because we know how much people are willing to pay for things. And that's entirely what we build our worldview on. I mentioned David Bollier. He worked with his colleague Silke Helfrich. Have done an astounding amount of work advocating for new thinking, new constructs, new concepts, developing new languages for how we talk about value and how we talk about stewardship versus ownership of resources. These two quotes he gave in a talk in 2019 that resonate with me. I won't read them out, but commons are enacting different forms of value without the price system. And this one's nice too. The price, like the value of something, isn't just how much somebody's willing to pay for it in euros or dollars or yen. Value has much richer meanings. It has social value, ecological value, generational value, cultural value that is not integrated into the price that we see on a price sticker. What is a commons anyway? Is everyone here familiar with what a commons is? Does anyone not know what a commons is? Okay, we have a few. Cool. Do the people who don't know what a commons is, have you heard of the phrase tragedy of the commons? So, okay. So, spoiler alert, the person who coined the phrase later regretted it because it became so popular and so pervasive that it became fundamental to economic programs everywhere in the world. His name was Hardin, and Hardin described in the 1960s this scenario. If there is a land and people are allowed to put their cows on that land, people will bring as many cows as they can, and soon that land will be barren and no longer useful for a pasture field. Makes a lot of sense, right? But he's not describing a commons at all. What he's describing is a complete free-for-all that has no community and that has no set of protocols. And I think he later realized his mistake. There's an American scholar, writer, cultural critic. I really like his rephrasing of the tragedy of the commons to the tragedy of unmanaged, laissez-faire, common pool resources with easy access for non-communicating, self-interested individuals. And I think that he himself even regretted this tragedy of the commons, which has since been debunked. So we know a commons isn't a free-for-all. It's something more socially cohesive than that. A commons comes about when a community treats a resource as a shared wealth. Their value of this resource is not just monetary. There's no commonsing without there's no commons without commoning. It's a process of active community participation. It's being looked at now as an alternative, viable alternative to capitalism that puts well-being of the planet and its humans at the center. Commoning is a verb and it's active. The question is, for a particular community, is a particular community motivated enough to do the work to manage a commons? Can it come up with the rules together, collectively? Can it be active and participatory? Can it enforce sanctions against infractions? And I'm going to come back to this question at the end of this talk. So commons never really disappeared. You know, we think of human cooperation in its most basic form. They're very small community agreements that happen. You know, two great examples that are on my radar from the Thinking Like a Commoner book by Bollier is Hawaiian shore big waves and neighborhood parking. So who gets the next wave? There's a community and a shared resource and a set of protocols that they follow for who gets the next wave. In very cold Chicago winters, and the Department of Transportation doesn't clean the streets of snow, the people in the neighborhood get out their shovels and they create parking spaces for themselves. And they've developed a set of protocols to manage this shared resource. Not anyone can then just come park into this parking spot, but the neighborhood has a set of protocols to determine who can and who can't. Seed and biodiversity preservation, this is not something that's going to happen by the corporations. They're more interested in creating seed dependency from their own particular seed strains. Community currencies, open access scientific journals. You know, there's a great group, they have a panel here, they have a workshop here today, the DSci community. They'll have a panel at Shelling Point, making science open and accessible. What greater resource do we have than shared wealth and resource do we have than science and knowledge and learning? And of course, our cultural products, the things that we as humans have invented. The Creative Commons license was created specifically to create a way to allow that work out into the public to be reused by other artists, by other intellects, in order to stop the, I don't know, the stopping of spread of ideas. Commons are the natural byproduct of human cooperation and human ingenuity, and that's why they still will, they'll always exist. And the idea is, how can we make commonsing more of something that people understand as an alternative way to govern, to peer govern, and to protect the shared value resources that are important to us. Okay, Commons offers hope to reinventing dysfunctional governments and reforming predatory markets. Enter CommonStack. We are on a mission. We are on a mission to see as many commons in the world governed by active communities that care about that resource as possible. With the 8 design principles for robust governing of commons, or governing of robust commons, as our North Star, and token engineering is our sandbox, we build and develop these tools and protocols that allow communities to deploy their own commons. And the dream is that whenever a community says, we want to manage and steward this resource collectively for the purpose, for the benefit of everyone, we're there, and they have an open source library, they have open source tools that they can use to create this commons for themselves. We focus in 3 different areas: applied research, products and development, and services. So conceiving new ideas and new cryptoeconomic primitives. Building those and testing them in real environments. And lastly, helping other communities do the same. The design patterns of the Common Stack was used first by the token engineering community. The token engineering community launched the Token Engineering Commons using the technical elements, which are mostly here. So augmented bonding curve for regenerative funding back into the commons. Every interaction with the bonding curve, whether it's a mint or a burn, puts some percentage into a commons pool that is then used for the mission of that community. Conviction voting, which just allows anyone, anytime to weigh in. Meaning that people don't have to have majority decision making in a fixed period of time, but support for a proposal of spending the funds of the community can gradually build up over time by many small voices instead of 1 or 2 big whales. They raised over $1.5 million DAI in a closed fundraise and have since and have collected over 200K via the augmented bonding curve and have funded over 200K of projects that support token engineering, like the Token Engineering Academy Fundamentals, which will be a bachelor level program for token engineers, free open source program open to anyone, with really some of the luminaries in the token engineering space. The Proposal Inverter, which is a project with Block Science and Prime DAO and Longtail Financial and Common Stack and Token Engineering Commons. I won't get into the details, but there's a bunch of people working on Proposal Inverter that are here in this conference today. Gravity DAO, which is a DAO that's helping create conflict transformational experiences in multiple DAOs. And Consilience Library. Most importantly, token engineering built a large, active, participatory community. And that's what commenting is all about. A community stewarding a shared resource under an agreed set of protocols. Okay, so I told you the question was, is there a community that's willing to put in the effort to create a commons for their piece of wealth, their shared resource that they want to see continue? The Commons Stack has launched the Commons Prize, and we're accepting nominations through May 6th. Basically, what we are going to do is partner with a community and help them launch their commons. We have some really great nominations already, and there's a website here where you can go find out everything you need to know about eligibility requirements, about the kind of communities we're looking for. Obviously, it has to be a community that's supporting public goods, not a community that's hoping to build an extractive centralized exchange or something like that. Yeah, that's the end of my talk. I hope that you liked it, and I'm here if you have any questions. Can I open it for questions? Does anyone have any questions they want to ask now? Oh, cool. Do you want to come take this? Okay.
How are you defining public goods?
Yeah. How am I defining public goods? So public goods are something that is going to be benefit freely open populations. So a public good is something that is going to not be, what's the word I'm looking for? Restricted to individuals. It's going to be something that anyone can use and participate in. Yeah, yeah.
How like different is commons from like aspects of governance in a sense? Like, does it require? Because I guess it would.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, it does require governance, but there's different models of governance than we're really familiar with today, that a lot of us are familiar with today. So it's not a top-down governance, it's really more horizontal governance. And one of the exciting things about what Commons Stack is able to do is build tools to facilitate this kind of governance on a larger scale. Which means, I would hope means that we can have larger commons. Commons are really, you know, meant for like, or had been up until now, really specific to, you know, small areas, because it requires so much coordination and cooperation between the people who are stewarding the commons that you know, you needed to have good relations. You needed to be able to mutually monitor what other commoners are doing in your commons. And so some of the tools that we're building, and then I think are available in the Web3 space too. I think a lot of Web3 actually facilitates this idea of alternate forms of governance. And Commons Stack is just focused on the commons perspective, but Web3 allows amazing different forms of governance than we've had today.
So would you also target like unions? Do you think that's a good case study for commons? Or is that too politically induced?
I mean, it's interesting. I don't know so much about unions, but I guess what they're mainly concerned about is preserving rights for the workers of a particular organization. and that would be a good for that for the group of people in that organization. Yes, Chris.
Yeah, could you maybe repeat like what this Commons Prize is and which website I should go to? And yeah, what will you receive?
Yeah, man, can I go to another thing here? Yes, I can do that. And I feel like, sorry, maybe I can't do that. Okay, so the Commons Prize is, basically it's the Commons Stack team that is going to donate our time and all of our efforts to helping another community launch a Commons. The token engineering community was the first. We have some great ideas like open science, open hardware projects. UBI would be a great Commons. Digital identity would be a great Commons. There's many different initiatives that are trying to do the same thing, spread out across different projects. And for those projects to come together and say, we all want UBI to be a thing, and we can fund projects that benefit all of us, rather than one group have to foot the bill for everything, is the exact idea of what a Commons can be, the next Commons could be. We have some eligibility requirements. It has to be a community. When we had an interest campaign just to see if people were interested in it, we had some submissions around the building of a product. And a product could be a great idea that gets funded by a Commons, but not necessarily the thing to have a Commons for itself. So it has to be a community already. They have to be a community that is supporting public goods. So not a community that's hoping to create funding and then, fund a trip to the Bahamas for all of the DAO members. But fund something that will be benefit for everyone, even outside of the community. So open source software, research, education are three big ones. And then we're going to, we're templating this process so that other communities will be able to launch their own Commons using runbooks that we're building. And we'd like to see cyber-physical Commons in the future for on-the-ground activists. But for this next project or this next community that we're partnering with, we do want to have some Web3 familiarity because we feel like onboarding an initiative for fisheries in Scotland would be a blocker to us actually bringing them onto on-chain governance and MetaMask and these kind of common Web3 tools. Yes?
I had a question too, like how you guys would answer that question, like what communities are motivated to manage Commons? Like I would say communities that are most directly affected by it, but I was wondering maybe if you had like some kind of theoretical way to I don't know, I guess explain that. Maybe like some sub-communities that are maybe semi-affected by it.
Yeah, I think that thank you for this question. I think it's great. There's a lot of initiatives. There's a lot of groundswell for certain ideas. One of the submissions that we got was like a feminist forward Commons to support research, education, and tools to help women. Right? And it's very broad. It could help women in technology or in maternal death rates or in any kind of way to help women in unseen care work. So it's this kind of idea. Wherever there's a movement and there's a group of people who are really passionate and in it for the long term. I was talking to somebody else today and I was saying a Commons isn't, we have all these tools now and I can push a button and launch a DAO and I just need to choose token supply and a name of my token and a few different people and distribution and it's done. The Commons isn't that. The Commons is, you go into this for 9 to 12 months knowing that you're building the community and doing what we're calling collaborative economics to choose the parameters for this economy that we're building, the governance structure that we're building. So I would say it has to be a community that's really passionate about something, that's really committed. Yeah, and then just has the drive to do it. Another interesting comments was the like refi groups are like, that's a great idea. Regenerative finance commons could be another fantastic commons. Oh, I didn't get close. I'm trying to, there's a, so the commonstack.org/the commons prize.
I think if you click it just there.
Oh, nice.
The comments.
All right, here.
Yeah. No? Yeah. Can you go there? Yes.
Oh, I think I might not be on the network anymore. Thanks. Okay, cool. If that's it, thanks everyone for coming. And please come talk to me. Come talk to Maria from Common Stack, Max, Zeb. Come talk to all of us, please. Thank you.